Having never made a game before, there were multitudes of skill-based obstacles that I needed to research and eventually overcome to make this game possible. First of all, what resources would I need? A video game is a carefully crafted composition of different media elements such as sound, image, and interactivity. For my game to be possible, I'd need software and hardware that could make these different elements, and then another piece of software that could composite all of these elements into the final masterpiece, the game. Through my research, I found several different tools for each unique purpose. However, I chose Maya for my 3D modeling due to its common use within the industry, and various Adobe products for other elements such as sound and image editing. To bring everything together, I chose to use Unreal Engine as my game engine, as it had several features I preferred over other game engines. It had an easy to understand layout that felt like it was designed by people who actually use the software, an easy to learn visual scripting language, powerful map building tools, and best of all, one of the best rendering and lighting engines I've ever seen, perfect for my goal of photorealism within the final game product. After completing detailed research on all of the different tools that I could use within my project, and choosing the most suitable as such, I went on to the next big task, actually learning to use the software. This was by far one of the most painstaking and time-consuming portions of my project. In fact, it by far extended the time I had originally provisioned for this stage of the project within my Gantt chart. Throughout this process, I followed several different guides relevant to different aspects I wanted to achieve within my final product. Concept art, transferring concept art to low polygon 3D models, refining the 3D model into a high polygon model, baking out normal and other texture maps, and finally using the finished models within the Unreal Engine. Once I was confident I had learned all of the technical skills and correct workflows relevant to my project, I moved on to making my unique game assets. First of all, I looked for reference images of different architecture that I liked, and then started to shape out the basic floor plan, referring to my reference images often, using the scale of known objects such as doors as references to create a realistic, true-to-life scale for the rest of the building. After creating all of this geometry, I created collision meshes for some of the more complicated shapes. I then moved everything to Unreal, positioned it, baked the lighting, and finally gave it a quick playtest to see how everything felt. After some minor adjustments to the scale of things so that it felt less cramped, I moved on to the next part of this process, set dressing. Set dressing is the process of taking various props to add realism to the scene. Things such as chairs, lights, pipes, cups, plants, and other details, which are placed in a map to add atmosphere. I went through and started to model each individual component, adding my own artistic spin on the original reference image I had chosen. This was also a very time-consuming process, with components such as the staircase taking almost 7 hours in total to model, UV unwrap, clean up, optimize, bake, and texture, a process that needed to be taken for every single model within the game. As you can see, there was a great amount of effort, time, and care put into each model. Once all of this was completed, it came time to work on the final part of the project that made all the effort worth it, bringing everything into Unreal Engine. I started by bringing in the first prop that I made, the gas fireplace from the reference image. I had the idea that I wanted the player to be able to turn on and off the fire, so went off a temporary tangent to learn some elements of the visual scripting of Unreal Engine. Here is a snippet of the code that I made for the instanced object. Essentially, what it is saying for the engine to do is to wait for the player to be touching or inside the object's collision area. Once this happens, it checks to see what the current bound interact key is, and shows text to let the player know they can interact with the fireplace. A separate event in the same script says that if the player presses the interact key, toggle the visibility of the object's fire particle emitters. When leaving the area, the fireplace will no longer react to any input, as dictated by the enable and disable inputs on the collision nodes. I was happy with this interactivity, so moved on to bringing in all of my other 3D assets and applying their textures. I then went through the process of carefully placing each element into the scene in the most aesthetically pleasing ways that I could. With the time running out, I used a few open source royalty-free libraries to download a few of the final models, such as the statue, as I hadn't practiced character modeling much, applying a marble texture I had made earlier to the model. With the scene essentially complete, I added a few final touches such as a coffee mug and a plant.